I am in the Natural Resources, Environment, and Energy team. I'm here today to talk about beavers, mainly because they're phenomenal engineers and just so stinking cute, little T-Rex furry beasts, right? But before I start, give you a little bit of background so that you get used to my voice. So when I do tell you stuff that's important, you hear me. My first degree is in zoology. I studied wildlife management and specifically fur-bearing mammals. So I do have a long affection for the beavers and the other animals that in Illinois that are cute and fuzzy, if you will. I studied, I'm a little older. I studied wildlife management back when many people counted on natural food to sustain their families. So hunting was a way to provide, and wildlife managers, which is what I studied to be, though I don't manage wildlife as much as I, would have thought I did. Wildlife managers had to research and be sure to keep animal populations at high enough to help people feed their families and supplement their groceries, but not so low that the population became unhealthy. And they really did care about those species beyond just how many can we hunt, how many can we can't, how many we can't we. This is called maintaining a viable population. Now, furs or pelts were another way, and they were very expensive. You could get paid a lot of money, but again, it was regulated and there were rules, so you couldn't over harvest, we call it pelts. And I do have a couple different ones today. So this one is a muskrat. This was one where these muskrats were very popular. They're very soft. And it may be uncomfortable for some people to think that we hunted these animals, but the whole job of any living thing is to repopulate itself. And if we don't have the right cycles of predators and prey, some of these animals can get out of their parameters of number. And then what happens is disease takes over and horrible things can happen as well. And those populations can get sick and create kind of a collapse of food chains, if you will. So, what do many wildlife managers do today? That's not what we do today. They deal more with people and what I call the human wildlife interface. So, the chat is open. My hosts are going to be taking questions. But if you have a second, while I keep talking a little bit more about what I do, what do you think that means, that human wildlife interface, compared to what I was talking about, the way we used to manage for viable populations? Just throw some ideas in there and we'll see what pops up that our hosts think are interesting. So why beavers today? Well, people have become enamored in social media. Who knew when I was in college and there was no such thing as cell phones, I know I just aged myself, that people one day would be looking at their phones and laughing and sharing pictures of these little chewing rodents on trees and especially chewing food, crunchy lettuce. People watch this stuff. Okay, I've watched it too. It's cute, but it's a great chance for us to go back to understanding an animal. And more importantly, they're a fantastic example of what it takes to live with such an amazing bioengineer. They are a living, bio means life, right? A living engineer who don't know there's a certain lack of appreciation for some of their skills. So let's get started. And my host friends, did you see anything come in on the chat? Does anybody have an idea what it means for that, my own term of human wildlife interface? It's okay if there isn't. They might pop in later. If you come up with something or if somebody shares something, we can always come back.
Hi, there's nothing in the chat now, but I know some people said they're waiting to type.
Oh, okay. Well, we can jump in. For those of you on this I'm better as I can be a speaking engagement, believe me, but I'd rather you and my hosts know that if you have a question, we're going to try to do it as we go, which means I might not get to everything, and that's okay, right? But I do have it broken down into their life history and biology, family life, sharp teeth. They were almost extinct, some engineering skills, what it means to food cache, tracks and scat, because there's nothing better than talking about animal poop, right? I know some of you were just like, what? Well, that's how I keep your attention, right? And then some pros and cons, right? So first of all, the biology and life history. They're our largest rodent. They are related to mice, right? Aren't you glad they can't get in your house and get in your cabinets? Because they can grow up to 4 feet long, if you include their tail, and up to 60 pounds easily. I've actually heard of 80, and there was a record, I don't remember, I saw it years ago, of 108. These are huge animals, but the lovely thing is they mate for life. So today's Valentine's Day. So somewhere out there, there's a beaver couple that don't know it's Valentine's Day because they'd chew the card up anyway because it's paper, right? But they're monogamous. They will re mate up with a new mate, male or female, if they lose their mate. If their mate dies, they will, because again, the whole job of things that are alive are to keep their population here, whether it's a plant or an animal or other things that reproduce, right? They're vegetarians, right? They're herbivores. They eat plants. They don't swim around and chew on fish. They are semi-aquatic, which means they can get out of the water. But if you've ever watched those videos, they aren't swift on the land as they are in the water. Their front feet aren't really helpful. They're kind of low, like literally T-Rex looking. And they are nocturnal. When early settlers came into the what is now the US, Native Americans were using them for their pelts and for meat because they were a food source and a pelt source. European settlers also found that to be helpful, and there was a lot of pressure. We didn't have hunting regulations, right? So they slowly, with natural selection, became nocturnal, which even with that tiny brain realized it's not cool to be out during the daytime. It's too easy to get hurt. They are territorial, and they will mark their territories with their scent glands. And then their family densities don't, they usually take about a half a mile a stream and then they keep aging out. So something to consider. Their lifespan, 10 to 12 years is kind of their average. And I double checked. This was from my college days. Hasn't changed, right? And in captivity, where did I see like a 19-year-old beaver? Because there's no predators, right? They're getting fed, they're cared for, they're getting veterinary care. So yes, in a zoo situation, most animals do live longer. I run a nature center in Northern Illinois, and we have things that live way longer than they should because they're getting ultimate care. All right. Before I go into family life, did anything come in? Oh, I think I saw something.
Yes, we have two questions currently.
Okay.
First one is from Juliana.
She's wondering why muskrats are so popular.
Muskrats, oh my gosh. They are mini me beavers, right? They're just a baby, like they're literally mini me's. They have the same lifestyle, everything I just read in miniature form. They weren't harvested so much for their meat as they were for the pelt. It's luxurious, and people wanted this starting in 16th century, late in the 16th century, and well into the 19th century. And we'll be talking about that. And I can just say it now. They nearly became extinct. Crazy enough, they weren't big enough for the supply and demand. And so it also then moved into the beavers, which have a similar coat, only bigger. So if I hold these up to my imaginary friends out there, right? I can't see or hear you, but I know you're there. So I'm going to hold these two up. There's the muskrat. Oh, there's the beaver, right? So the interesting thing about all these water animals, including mink, all right? So mink also super soft. They have what we have, little, it's kind of fuzzy to show it to you. It's guard hairs. But under these guard hairs, they all have this incredible down. But the guard hairs get coated with oil from their body and it makes them waterproof. So they can swim in this ice cold. I work right on a river. They're out there today, I'm sure, going to get ready to come out at dusk, and they can swim around in that cold water because they're safe. These were bigger, so you could make bigger things. And something that became super popular, I'm jumping way ahead, hats. Hats felted from beaver pelts. So it was really about the pelts, and if they were hungry, yeah, they would eat the meat. So yeah, not necessarily something I want in my diet. Was there another question in your pile?
Yeah, we have one more question. Actually, we have two. So this one's from Marcia. They were asking
Marcia.
what kind of impact have man-made dams and levees had on beaver habitat and populations?
Wow, big question. So that kind of blends in with the whole thing. I'll jump a little bit into that. We got the idea, right? That's the biomimicry. Oh, let's dam stuff and hold water, right? And we can create that. Sometimes when we put in a human dam, they're happy because they don't have to work and they can have their deep water. They want that deep water to get away from predators, right? When they have to do all the work themselves, it's a lot and it's not going to be as big as human dams. Now, if you dam one area and they're behind it, I would assume they'd be very happy. But if there were beaver at the lower side of that dam and you cut them off, the frustration is going to be real. And what they might end up doing potentially is going, okay, I can't hide from predators. There's a whole family that's not mine upstream. I can't move, but I want to be here. So I'm going to put in another dam. So that slowing down of a man-made dam, depending on how far down the next beavers build, might make a stair step that's helpful to slow down the water flow, or it may flood outward and go work against, what was originally the plan. So working together is something we're going to talk about at the end that people are doing in other countries right now, and here. And we're kind of getting back to realizing that we could do a whole lot with less money if we let the beavers do it. What was the other question?
Thank you so much. And then this is the next one.
Sephora would like to know how long a beaver can live.
Ooh, so again, in captivity, close to 20 years. But when they are on their own and they're dealing with predation, diseases, injuries, right? They're 10 to 12 years, right? So that's still a long living animal because they're bigger. There's a little bit longer lifespan. Kind of the bigger the bird, the bigger the mammal, you start to see lifespans it get bigger, right? So the average, is 10 to 12, but that depends on your area, right? Roadkill is a thing, right? If they build and live near a road or a road goes in a more wet area and they have beaver can't run. You guys, not very fast. They can swim fast, but they can't run, right? So a little bit more on their life, their family life, right? They need to meet their life range. Many of you, depending on your age, have heard about habitat, and habitat, food, water, shelter, space. They can make that happen for themselves, right? If they have the right plants to eat, they can create the habitat they need. And so they usually have, within their space, their pair, they have their offspring, and they usually keep their first, say they have a offspring last year and now they're going to have more offspring. They usually keep everybody, and they literally family build dams and family collect food. So they live in, it's called a colony, right? Then the next year after that, when they have more kits, they call them kits, and that's a cute name for a very cute. Go online, you'll find them everywhere. The baby beaver, they make some crazy sweet noises. When those kits come in, the oldest teenagers tend to be like, yeah, this place is too small. We're out of here. And they're ready to go and start their own families, right? And increase that population. And they tend to only keep that 1 and 2 year level of offspring with them. Beavers will live in a large lake and not have to build a dam. They'll just build a lodge. But when they build in a river or a stream, which is what I have here, and what started this whole idea about beavers are amazing, in our lowland, all of a sudden we had looked like somebody was building with Lincoln logs. They were just tree after tree after tree. And I'm like, oh, this is phenomenal. I get to go down. And I found where they lived because they banked in. They go in, they dig under the bank, usually under big tree roots, and then they go down and then up. So when the water fills up, their house stays dry and less predators can get to them. Okay, because they're protected. It's their safe space. They don't go too far from the water's edge because they know not consciously, right? These are innate knowledge that they can't run fast, right? So they stay pretty close. They might travel in a little bit for a big tree to chew on, but they don't hang out far from the water. Just like water turtles, that's their escape plan. So you can picture a den. They go under and then they go up. So I don't mean to compare it to something, but this is so you understand. It's like a toilet, right? A toilet has what we call a trap of water. That way, no smelly stuff comes from the sewer back into your house. The water stops anything from coming through that's air, but there's oxygen in the lodge. So they get up there and they can even have vent holes if it gets too warm. And in the winter, they may have less of those. And they tuck in there and they come out and go back in and use those spaces. So they definitely provide, okay? So they'll eat bark and leaves and twigs, and we'll talk about caching. Lilies, cattail, remember they're herbaceous. They're vegetarians, if you want to put it in our terms. But the North American beavers also provide this huge ecological benefit. But but their activities tend to conflict sometimes with us. We've talked about that. So other than predators like wolves, coyotes, bears, lynx, wolverines, otters sometimes would get in and get the kits. The biggest threat predator wise where I'm at are mink. Mink will go in and the kits are born March and April. And if they know where the beavers are and the beavers are out, they may slide in there because they are carnivores, right? So that's kind of hard to think about, but that's how it happens. It's a little bit much. Did you hosts have another question?
So we have actually a lot of questions. If you want,
Oh.
you can get through a little more of your presentation and then we can answer them
Okay.
later, or we could do them now, whichever one works
Let
best.
let me do this next one. We're all the way to 3. Let's do the self-sharpening teeth real quick. It's short,
All
and
right.
then we'll jump off before we talk about the near extinction problem and the fact that they dropped them out of an airplane with parachutes. Kid you not. We'll get to that in a moment. Hold on. Don't go anywhere. Right? So self-sharpening teeth. So the word I want you to think about with this section is adaptation, right? Animals adapt. Natural selection helps them adapt. They can't do it overnight. They can't go, yeah, we should have different teeth, right? So the ancient giant beaver, the size of a bear, didn't have these teeth and they're gone. So that might tell you something, right? But our current day beaver, I have a skull here with me that I love because it's very cool. I was doing a sneak peek earlier with the host. So when I look over there, it's because I can see myself. I'm showing, make sure I can see the skull. So this is a beaver skull. What they don't have canines. They're not out there attacking anybody to eat meat. They're simply attacking cattails and small trees and twigs with these big incisors. These are your incisors. Here's your crunchy molars. Their molars are flat, almost fossil-like. So they can just crush everything up. They eat a lot of fiber, right? So they have to be able to grind that stuff up. Here's the cool thing. Their teeth they take the iron out of their food and their body leaves it right here on their teeth. And that's hard. Iron is a hard metal. When you think about like cast iron skillets, maybe you haven't seen one of those, they're very heavy. This iron makes their teeth so hard, but the teeth behind it are soft. So what that does is allows when they chew, the chewing breaks the soft part behind it, but not this, making the perfect biomimicry here. I'm going to try to get my face out of the way if I can. It's kind of hard. It makes a chisel. This chisel effect is what cuts through the tree. They turn their head and just chisel right away. And it's really quick. I mean, they can really do a lot of work. I don't like to call it damage. I like to call it determination, right? It's damage to a human. Cutting a tree is not damage to a beaver. It's their innate job, right? So here's the cool part. I always wondered, okay, if they produce teeth endlessly like all of our rodents, that'd be cool for humans, wouldn't it? We wouldn't need braces. We just get new teeth. That'd be handy, right? So get this. I found out when I got this beaver skull that the teeth are actually created clear back here because I'm thinking, what if they break quickly and then they're toothless? Are they going to starve to death? Get this. It's developed here. I'm going to take the top mandible and skull off. Look at those wide. They have very big orbits in their skull for how tiny their eyes are. Right? So here we have this. You ready? Oh, this is so cool, you guys. I hope you can see it. So here comes this tooth. This one's not glued in. What? Oh my gosh. This is the tooth out of this skull for this beaver. Let's see if I can hold it up. Okay, so this is my my adult hand, and he has that much tooth to go through that was being developed clear back here. I think that's pretty freaking cool, right? And the best part is it stores itself. How nice is that, right? So beavers incisors, they never stop growing, so they don't become too worn down. The iron-rich enamel on their front teeth makes them very strong and allows it to be chisel-like because it's hard and doesn't wear as fast as the back, as the soft backside. And beavers need strong teeth for what they do, right? For all the work they do and the way they eat, they have to have really strong teeth. That is an adaptation. All right, questions.
Okay, so right now we have 10 questions. So we'll start up at the top. The first one
Okay.
is fourth grade gifted Sycamore Trails class.
Oh, they're smarter than me.
Their question is, how can you tell if a beaver is a male or a female?
The same way you could do a dog. hmm They have all the same parts as a male mammal, but don't go checking. They'll get you bit.
Okay, and our next
The
question
girls are trying not to laugh, but it's true. You don't want to go poking around and find out.
it's the next one's from Kaylee. She wants to know what got you interested in beavers. Have they been your favorite animal since you were little?
Since I was little, I went through a box not that long ago. Otters. Otters are one of my favorite mammals. They're exquisite. They are brilliant. They have the same kind of coat, but they all live in the same space. So I love that whole group of adaptive animals. And the cool thing, maybe next year I'll do otters. Otters are they're not doing us the same engineering, but they are a predator who helps keep all the food chain in balance, right? They are a predator that can help. They are cute but I do love beaver. To be honest, my next brother up, 10 years older than me. So yeah, if you were on here in the beginning, you remember I said, yeah, he's older. And when he was little, he wanted to be called Beaver because of a show, an old show called Leave It to Beaver. So to this day, my brother is Beaver, and you can't help but like him. So it's always been a thing in our family that beavers have been strangely around. Now you know more about me than you ever thought you needed to know.
All right, for this section, I think we'll do 2 more questions and then you
Okay.
can continue your presentation.
We have another question from the 4th grade Ignite Sycamore Trails. How can you tell the difference between a muskrat and a beaver?
Ooh, I wish I had a picture, but I'm very bad at technology. So we'll go with this. So the beaver and the muskrat look very similar when they're moving around. They're a little chunky. They got little front feet. They got hind feet that are webbed. So both of them would have webbed hind feet. This is the beaver. This is a rubber track. I didn't pull a beaver's foot off. That would be weird, right? Right. And here's the front foot. If you imagine these 2 feet on a muskrat, they'll just be a lot tinier, but they're almost identical. The muskrat has bonier back feet because he's a little guy, right? When they're swimming, the beaver have this huge flat tail for swimming. It propels them through the water. And also when they get mad or you startle them, they will slap that thing on the water and scare the bejeebas out of you. And I had one do that, and I was in a canoe, and then he not also rolled and purposely slapped it under my canoe. It was like Jaws for me, right? I was like, what's happening? The muskrat tail is vertically like this. It's like a keel, right, to steer, and it goes through the water this way. It does not slap its tail, but its tail shape is like this. So it does this. So if you see something small in the spring, you're like beaver, muskrat. It could be a baby, a young beaver. It's the size of a muskrat. But if the tail is this way and doing this long, undulating this way, that's a beaver. If it's doing this, it's the keel tail of a muskrat. But otherwise, they look really similar. Once you start looking, their faces are tiny. They're just a tiny version. So everything's kind of miniatured on them. It's not very technical, is it?
All right, so we have 1 more question. This one is from an anonymous attendee. It says
They might know me.
It says, we know you are talking about beavers, but we were wondering how your snail friend is doing and how is your tortoise friend?
Oh, Esther Duncan. Esther Duncan was showcased last year on this with Miss Pam and I, and Esther Duncan is still alive at my home in her room with her pill bugs and sow bug friends. And I feel like an idiot saying it, but she is my enamor. I just love her. She gets organic lettuce, and she gets misted twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day in the winter because her terrarium is got cracks in it for air. But oh my gosh, thank you for asking about Esther Duncan. She's aging, but she's alive, and all the plumbing's working. She goes to the bathroom every day. And TJ the tortoise is here in our building, and he is now 75 pounds and doing very well. He had a doctor checkup this summer. For all of you on this call, TJ is my poster child for why you should not buy exotic species that outlive you and you can't keep them in your home. These guys they're sold when they're cute and little, and they don't usually see their whole lifespan. They should be dodging elephant feet. So having pets with things that can't flourish is hard for me. And so we took him against my best judgment. But the young lady that needed me to adopt him started crying. And I said, fine, but I got to tell people you made a really bad choice. So he's doing well. His Instagram has not been updated. But if you want to see, for those who don't know, TJ, it's TJ_tortoise. There's some, I'm his caregiver, so I haven't been doing enough on his Instagram, but you can see him there. Thanks for asking, anonymous friend. So we'll start back with this comeback. Something you need to know about these beavers, they were so much in demand for those fancy hats and pelts and meat that they almost became extinct. And really the big hit was those felted men's hats. And they looked nice. I don't know how they felted it like wool, but they did. And the thing that I said it a little bit, Robin Wall Kimmerer, who's the distinguished teaching professor at State University of New York and author of Braiding Sweetgrass and Gathering Moss, the most lovely indigenous scientist I've ever read, she said something that I love, which is all flourishing is mutual. When we lose something in this natural environment, we have no idea what string is being pulled. And we almost lost beaver. And beaver are throughout the whole U.S., except for the very top part of where there's just nothing liquid. And they're clear down to Florida. They are in Europe. Europe came really close to losing all of them. The European, ours is the American beaver, and theirs is considered the European beaver, obviously by location, I suppose. But beavers are a keystone species. They build habitat. And though that might come into conflict with people, they don't know we care. They are doing their job that is natural, meaning a lot of other species that rely on them for survival because they're the most effective native species in their range at modifying a landscape. We have to be very careful as managers of wild areas. How do we decide that? We have to have ahead of time a plan. Beaver moves in. And some of you on this may be high school students, maybe you're fourth graders that already know what you want to do. I want you to do whatever it is you want to do when you grow up, but you can't ignore that wherever you live, you might have a situation where your community has to make a decision of life or death for a local beaver population. And if you only look at it from your perspective, like, well, this makes it inconvenient for me. Well, the beaver doesn't know. He's not out there going, let's flood so-and-so's house and watch them get mad. They have no clue, right? Without the beaver, ecosystems would drastically change, right? We talked about this, the ponding or pooling, the water that they make due to dams creates all new habitat. In Illinois, specifically, because that's where I'm at, one of our biggest lost habitats, we've lost over 90% of our wetlands since settlement. They put them back. And what comes back, if you build it, they will come, is not just a baseball movie. If you build it, things come back. If we can live beside them and let them flourish, it's a mutual agreement, and it makes us a mutual worker in that same part of the world. And I'm not saying that we allow flooding of our homes and losing people's assets is good. I'm saying we have to make decisions. And it doesn't matter if you are a computer scientist, if you are a garbage collector, the most important job we have, because everybody wants their trash to disappear, right? A secretary, a doctor, I don't care who you become, you will be a part of these decisions. You can't just say, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a naturalist, I'm definitely not a fur-bearing mammal naturalist like Peggy, but it matters, right? So their range extends the continental US into Canada, parts of Mexico, excluding the driest parts and the iciest parts, right? And their population has not always been that high. They were almost hunted to extinction. And one of the things, you're going to love this one. One of the things that they were taken for a long time, and until very recently, we were still using it, is their castoreum. So they have glands, not anal glands, just so those of you are thinking about it, on each side of their tail. And remember, I talked about their pelt being waterproofed? So the beaver will take a time out, sit down on the bank, and he will rub his front feet on those glands, and it's like put lotion out of a bottle, but it's waterproofing. And they wipe it all over themselves. It smells like a kind of a musky vanilla. And so they all smell so beautiful. Maybe that's why they mate for life. They smell so good, right? So they're covering themselves up with this castoreum, but it turns out we people were harvesting that castoreum. And now they're making it synthetically more often. But if you've ever read something that you eat, kid you not, that's got vanilla, raspberry, sometimes strawberry, and in the ingredients, it lists natural ingredients on the food label, it's still considered safe. So, who teachers, wherever you're at, put in castoreum, so castor, Castoreum. I'm not allowed to share different videos because of unless I ask people, to share them publicly like this. Go in and look, and you'll find there's a natural history museum one about castoreum. And yeah, it's from beavers, and we won't go any farther with that scary thought, right? But it's true, and it's kind of funny and interesting. So beavers were also viewed not only for all those good things, but they were viewed as nuisance. So the habitat loss with people and people moving across the landscape and building homes and stuff, we have really limited where they can do what they do best. And then when we do that, sometimes it floods or creates a problem. So when it doesn't create a problem, my big thing when you guys were asking about how long have you loved beavers since you were little, basically yes, next to the otters, right? They don't have as many spaces to do their job, and they could bring back so much, right? And we used to have between 100 and 200 million beaver on the continent. If you're in another country, you can check your numbers in Europe. But we got down to like 100,000 animals. And now they're coming back. And even as recently as 2022, California has been sticking them in out in the wild, relocating instead of destroying the animal when they're doing something naughty. They have places now they're moving them to that need help. In Oregon and California, they just did this, like I said, and they haven't done that since 75 years. And get this, and this you've heard a lot about wildfires. They're actually one of nature's best firefighters, because when they flood an area, it's not just wet with some water. The soil is soggy. The plants are very hydrated. And when those fires come, running across the landscape, there was an article just recently in January on BBC, and they showed pictures of this forest fire that just went raging through. And then there was this beautiful green oasis, which means things that got out of the fire and started coming back had that oasis to use, thanks to the beaver, as they repopulated and started their life waiting for things to now emerge back after fire. So in fact, beavers are so great at shaping the landscape, they're often referred to as these nature engineer and firefighters. Tribal efforts in California to bring them back have helped salmon populations. But these things take time, and we have to talk to people and explain it to people. But what would happen if they went extinct, right? We don't know all the things, but there's people that don't want them anywhere near them because they only think of their determination as a problem or an issue or damage, right? And real quick, and then we'll check for questions. Teachers, if you want to go in and sometime after hearing this presentation, put in 1948 Idaho beaver drop. I kid you not. And it worked. So clearly our people who protect animals, the organizations weren't around yet, but it was successful. They wanted to continue building the beaver population, but they wanted to also keep a natural space in check that didn't have enough beavers. So Idaho Fish and Game Department took 76 beavers from areas they were doing things that people didn't appreciate. They were damaging, right? They created, now this is 48, so they created crates, nothing like what we could create today, wood, rope, everything that was biodegradable back then. They created these adult beavers up, put parachutes on them, and flew them into the back areas of Idaho where they were needed to recreate these wetlands, and dropped them with parachutes. 75 out of 76 successfully hit the ground. When they hit the ground, the boxes pop open. If they don't, they're wood and they chew themselves out in minutes. Only one beaver didn't make it. That ratio is huge. Not good for the one beaver that didn't make it. He chewed through his crate before he got to the ground. But 75 did. And they started that they got to stay alive and got to go do what they needed to do, right? But they literally dropped him out of a twin engine Beechcraft airplane. And the video is in black and white, which is always fun for students to remember. We didn't always have color stuff, colored pictures. So, all right, we're at a good breaking spot for questions.
All right.
We have a question from Michaela. How long can beavers hold their breath for?
Ooh, Michaela, thank you. I read a few different things, but it's like turtles. It's like seems like forever. Because they have to swim under ice this time of year and make it to other places. Their lung capacity differs by size, but some people have recorded 5 minutes and some up to like 10 or 12 minutes, I think, of just doing their thing. And what you reminded me of, Michaela, that I didn't share, they have a flap in their throat, kind of like your uvula, which stuff sticks and you cough, but it's a full flap. And evidently it's furry. That would be horrible to always have hair in your mouth. But what happens is when they travel, okay, I've got my little stick here, right? This is a beaver chewed stick. Look how clean that is. Look at that bite. Bit it right off on both ends, cleaned it off. They ate it. They're done with this. They might put it on a dam, but this is like a corn cob and they corn cobbed it. It's gone. But when they swim and they're carrying these back to their lodge or their den or putting them in the bottom of a pond to store over the winter, if they're in a pond or lake, they'll take sticks that still have food on them, the outer, parts of the tree and the limbs, and they'll shove them into the mud. So it's like putting them in a refrigerator or a cooler. But when they swim, their mouth is going to be open, right? Oh, I know. I just bit that. Wonder how many beaver germs I have. It's okay. It's been around for a long time. The worst thing is probably dust, right? But when they do that, they can't shut their lips around it because it's open. So that flap stops water from rushing into their lungs, which allows them to hold their breath longer because there's no aspiration of water coming in.
Thank you so much. So we have like 15 questions, so we'll take it one at a time.
Okay.
So we have one from Amir, and he would like to know how do the beavers not get hurt when they cut the wood?
Oh, Amir. Well, here's the thing. I always wondered that. I actually have a picture of a tree that's almost gone. I don't know if we'll have time to go through photos at the end. It's like so skinny at the tip and it's like this big around. They don't know. They don't know where it's going to fall. That's the problem. So luck of the draw, it falls where you're not chewing, right? I would guess that some natural selection is taking place that they feel, that all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I'm trying to chew and I can't, I should move. But they have found beaver skeletons and beavers mushed under trees. So it's not a perfect science for the beaver. My question is, and I spend way too much time on these kinds of things, you guys. I was trained as a scientist, but I live as a naturalist. I truly believe in indigenous knowledge as my guide, and I just want to think and learn about these things. So I want to know when they chew it and it falls, but it hits another tree and it can't come down. I want to know how long they wait. How long do they sit there going, I don't know how their brain processes that, right? There's no way they can go, oh, bummer, dang it, right? They don't think like we do. We can't anthropomorphize them. So my big question, which is never going to get answered, is how long do they wait for that tree to come down? And that's my answer.
I think what you just mentioned, it provides a really good segue to this one question asked by Sephora, who asks, how can you tell a beaver's emotions?
Hi, Sephora. You cannot. We tend to, if you study them and you are with them all the time, you will notice their personal responses to things. I say that because I have watched, I was just doing a presentation last night, and I was injured and healing and sitting in a lawn chair with a shoulder surgery. And I watched a male cardinal feeding his daughter, and she was waiting, and he was kicking bugs out of my yard because I have a natural yard, of course. And every time he'd pick up a bug, she'd like, yay, and he'd feed her. And at one point, he was looking for a bug, and she, behind him, flew just a little bit into a shrub. And when he turned around, His whole body went tight. Now he's not going, oh my daughter, oh my gosh. But what I would assume is there's a panic because you're working hard to keep your population at a certain level. And he had a true, as we would call as humans, fear that he had lost his job that he was doing for the future. But let me tell you, when she popped out of that shrub, he gave her a talking to. If there is such thing as being grounded in the animal world, she got it. And she never left you. She just stayed real close. You know, you've been there, your dad or mom or grandma, whoever you live with, is like, you were in such big trouble and you feel really guilty. So you're really meek the rest of the day. Yeah. Yeah. Sephora, that's what happened. So I would guess you can't tell, but if you study something and you spend a lot of time with it, I think you would start to pick up on those small little things that would give you an inkling of a feeling and not necessarily an emotion because they don't understand, I don't think, the way we are.
So we're about to hit the 15-minute mark, and we have around 10 more questions. So what would you like to do? Would you like to finish up anything in your presentation, or do you want to take some more?
Yeah, really quick. Food caching. And I want to show that video that I talked to you guys about. I want to show you a dam that Miss Pam sent me a picture of a dam because food caching is a thing. So they will gather food, especially before winter. So if you think you know where the den is, lodges are obvious. They're big lumps of sticks out in a pool of water in a lake or a small pond. But the dens in the banks are hard unless you look for slides where they go in somewhere across from the den in the water, and they'll also pile it. You'll find all their dinner leftovers or dinner to be cut and piled by their door. That's just their kitchen. Their kitchen's just outside of their den, right? So they cache. We cache food by putting it in cupboards. They put it outside. And then looking ahead really quickly, tracks and scat. We talked about tracks. There's scat. They are, how many people have to look for fake poop on their desk every day? I love my job, you guys. So this is a rubber version. It's very fibery, and they are coprophagic. Some of you, excuse me, some of you may know what that means. Basically, they eat really fast. Rabbits do it because they are prey, not the predator. They need to hurry up and eat where they're exposed to the environment, where things might get them. They quickly eat. They don't fully digest that. And when it comes out, it's a specialized pellet that has been saved, if you will, and is ready to be consumed to digest and get the nutrients. We would never do that. Don't panic, right? But there are animals that's an adaptation, right? We talked about that adaptation that saves them from heavier predation. So I wanted you to know that. And I'll save the pros and cons to like 5 minutes at the end. And then let me show you the picture of the dam, which we practiced this. I just need to share the right screen. Oh, Miss Deb, I love it. I love Deb's faces up there. I can see my friend all the time. So I'm going to share screen number 2 and hope that, ladies, are we good?
Yep, we are all good. We can see it.
Okay, check that. You won't hear the sound, but this is a very big, those are sticks that are like small, tree limbs. This is the waterway that was moving, and this, look how much higher the water is on the backside, and there's a little spillway. So not only did the beaver create a pond behind it, it's filtering the water, cleaning the water. The sediment is being kept over here. That's loose soil that might be running off of this wetland. They have all this food to eat, right? They can go in and grab what they need. They keep up this dam with mud and sticks and rock. They literally will carry rocks, tiny little front legs. And then this pool is getting oxygen, you guys. The one where it's falling into is getting water, right? So I just want to be sure that those who may never get to see that got to see what a beaver dam looks like, right? I'm gonna stop that share. And then I'm going to try really quickly, just as an example for where I'm at. I have a double dam at my place. I'm going to move it over to, I'm going to stop this video and see if I can move it over to there. Just one quick picture where I'm at today, and I'll hopefully make it big enough. Let me share this real quick, folks. You guys are being very patient. You might be screaming. I wouldn't know, right? But you're being You're being patient. All right. This is our dam. Nothing as fantastic as Miss Pam's. This is water, backwater to our river where trees have fallen in and sediment has collected and it's just sitting out into the water. And when our beavers moved in this year, they didn't have to do the whole distance. They just had to put this little bitty one in. But you can still see this water is higher than this water. This is clear. You can kind of see it. It's clear. It's beautiful. And there's a ton of trees that are that have fallen in this space. But this, think about packing mud in moving water. I have no idea how they do so well. I'm going to try this picture just to tell me if you can see this picture. Do you see my host friends? Do you see the trees falling into the water that I'm
Yep.
pointing at?
Yeah, we could see it.
This is not the beaver dam. This is that pile on the left. The beaver dam's over on the side. This is what they're doing on our trail. So our trail is going to move in because it's taking away the ability for this not to erode more. But look at that. They're just dropping them and dropping them and dropping them, dropping them. They're having a blast. I will share with you guys that we are the forest preserve that I work with, that I sit and sitting here. They are going to leave those beavers to do what beavers do. So I'm glad to let you know that I'm calling them the Waltons because they have extended family in the same house, right? The Waltons are fine, and I can give you updates as needed if you need them. So let me get rid of this and take a few questions more, and then I'll take like a few minutes. I just want to tell them about the Czech Republic at the end. So shoot, you can go.
Okay, time to get into some questions.
That's what it was about.
Joey would like to know if beavers live in family groups.
They do. They do, and they raise the first clutch of young should be here this March, yeah, March, April. There's the females that are here in this family group, probably just two right now. Mom and dad are pregnant, probably, and we'll have kits in the spring, and those kits will stay through next year's clutch of kits. So they'll be the teenagers living at home when those babies come. When that second year of young come, those teenagers are like, I am not hanging out with all these people. It's getting too stinky in the lodge, right? I'm out. So then there's that rotation of siblings year after year.
All right, we have another question.
We have a question from Chase. You'd like to know how long it takes for beavers to build their dams.
You know, I'll jump into this really quickly because then I won't take much time at the end. So in the Czech Republic, this just came out in February, over on the other side of the planet in Czech Republic, they were working on a project for 7 years. So they had an old military site that they wanted to put back into wetland, and they had this plan they'd been working on for 7 years to try to get a dam built. Financially, they had to find it. It was like $1.2 million that it was going to cost them. So they were trying to get the money, trying to get all the steps done. Beavers came in, and I don't think they put them there. I think they finally came back in. They built a dam in 3 days that they've been trying to get built for 7 years. So they can stop water pretty quickly. And if you think about it, they almost have to work super fast because water's constantly moving. If they go, we'll build half today and go hang out, right? I think the erosion would happen. So I think depending on the size of the waterway, that the wider, the longer, right? But they work as a family. So maybe they're working together going, okay, you go here, I'll go here. Let's spread out children, everybody at the same time, plant that mud and put a stick on it. I don't know, but yeah, so they're pretty quick, and they just saved the Czech Republic $1.2 million. And then the thing they were talking about doing next, if they ever got that done, was in this gully, long, skinny space. They were going to put different small dams to slow the water to clean it. They already have 4 out of 7 of those dams built for them too, and they're not having to spend any money. Pretty cool.
Our next question is from Camden, who would like to know how beavers defend themselves from predators.
The bigger the better. They will slap their tail, might throw some animals off. They're pretty slow. If they're caught that's why they make those ponds. They make them so they can dive deep and nobody can grab them. Depending on where you live, Camden, wolves, where we are, I don't think we have coyotes that are, forgive me, dumb enough to grab a hold of a full-size beaver. they pretty much go for small rodents. But if a kit would, a baby beaver would somehow get out on the edge of the water, and it's everybody's, right? Otters, mink, coyotes, foxes, those would be your predators in this part of the Midwest. You get bigger, you get to wolves, you get to cougars. But again, those teeth, they're slow, right? They can't exactly like attack, but they could put on a pretty big show. But the bigger I mean, if you're going to be an 80-pound beaver, not too many animals are going to mess with you.
We have a question from Melanie who would like to know what the diet of a beaver is.
Oh, Melanie, fiber, fiber, fiber. Yeah. Yeah. They don't have any problem going to the bathroom, right? They are constantly pushing through fiber. They're probably the healthiest of all of us. But it's all plant material. So cattails, lilies, have been found part of their diet, especially the soft part of the trees. They don't want the heartwood, you guys. The dead wood on the inside of a tree is dead. There's no nutrition beyond the skin. The skin is where, for those of you maybe older, the xylem, the phloem, are all, and the cadmium starts with a C. It makes the cells for the phloem and the xylem. That's what they want. They want that inner bark. The majority of a tree is dead this time of year when the deciduous trees are dormant. The only living thing is that skin and the roots, right? The dead wood is just that. Heartwood is a weird name for dead wood, but so they're eating all the good parts and the soft, healthy parts.
The fourth grade Ignite class would like to know if beavers are soft, and if they are, why are they soft?
They're soft because they have that perfect fur. They're softer if a person, when you would get these pelts, if you shave these guard hairs off, which you can do, because I don't know if you can see how they're standing up. Let me put a piece of paper behind there and see if you can see. Hold on a little bit. Bing. See how they're standing up right there? If you shave those off, it is softer than sheep. It's down. It is the Native Americans would lay their babies on this. They would wrap in it. People wanted beaver coats because of their warmth. That is a really warm coat. Not as waterproof if you're not rubbing that all the gland juice on it, right? That castoreum. But I wish we could touch on video because this is a pelt I don't leave out. I have another one I leave out because kids love it so much. They've pet the guard hairs almost gone on the other one in our nature center. So this one I saved just to be able to show the guard hairs.
Another question from the fourth grade Ignite class. Do beavers only live on one continent?
No, they're European as well. Obviously, the Czech Republic. I didn't look to see beyond those stories, but they are a rodent, and they're second only in size to the capybara of South America. And beavers do go down into Mexico, and yeah, they're pretty widespread. But good thing they were because people hit them pretty hard for meat and pelts and hats.
All right, so I think we have maybe 6 or 7 questions left. And if you're okay with it, we could go a little bit over, but if not, we could fit in a couple more questions.
Let's do, and just give me enough time to say a closing sentence. How about that? You go till you can give me just a closing time.
Okay, that sounds good. So we can go with this one from Caleb, who would like to know if there are multiple species of beaver that still exist and how many have become extinct.
This is the one type of beaver. Of course, there's the subspecies like the Eurasian beaver, and then the American beaver. We used to have Castoria, which was the giant beaver. It had a skinny tail like a muskrat. It did not have the iron teeth. It is extinct, but it was the size of like a full-size bear, and it swam, but it didn't have the skills for building habitat for itself. So over time, it probably became, because it was herbaceous, right? It wasn't a predator. It was an oversized plant eater, right? And so it's not here anymore either. The closest would be relative in the rodent family here would be the muskrat. And then if you are in South America, the capybara, which I would love to see. They're bigger than our American beavers.
All right. Our next question is from Michaela, and she was asking, when beaver incisors grow, does the beaver tooth emerge from the lower mandible at a set pace, or does it grow as necessary?
You know, I think their body it grows slowly. And so when they chip those off, they're so strong they probably don't break all the way off. But it is their most important tool in their toolbox. So if something would happen and they would break off the top or bottom teeth, maybe they got bumped by a car but not killed, their life is in danger because those teeth are going to grow pretty quickly, but they have to get moving in order to work with the other set. All animals have a toolbox. And when you lose part of that, an example in one of my other presentations, mountain lions, if they lose one claw or one canine, it reduces their chance of life by 60% by continuing to live. It's important that they have all their tools, but they do keep growing. They do have to chew, which helps keep them worn down, but that's natural. They aren't sitting there going, "Oh, I don't want to chew today," right? They can't help it. They have to. It's just that's what they do.
All right.
We have another question from the fourth class. Do beavers really have the checkered patterns on their tails like we see in cartoons?
Yeah, they aren't as perfectly marked necessarily, but it does have a pattern to it. They just accentuate it for cartoons. You know, they always draw the hashes, and they actually do. And the muskrat has like a scaly look to it as well. I would call it more of a scaly look, and that hashtagging is kind of their way of replicating it for cartoons. I love that question. And go look at these videos of these when the beavers are sitting, they put their tail under like a little Buddha and they're just so stinking cute.
All right, we have 3 questions left. We're going to combine the 2 of them, but for the first
Okay.
one, Michaela asks, does the back of the incisors not turn orange because it doesn't have the iron or because it is not as exposed to air?
It's because the iron's not deposited on the inside. So natural selection over time, maybe, right, has created that iron deposit on the front. And because of that, it doesn't wear as fast as the back. And we want the back to wear faster so you get the point. So it's like a true chisel or a knife. Because if they wore the same, they'd be blunt and they wouldn't be able to get through those trees fast enough. And they wouldn't be able to build fast enough to build those dams by cutting limbs. So yeah, their body naturally deposits the iron on the front. So when you see cartoon beavers with white teeth, now you're going to be like, that's not right. That's what I do.
All right, 2 more questions. The first one is from Philippe. He would like to know why do beavers build dams in the rivers?
Mainly from everything that I've ever been taught or read is for defense mechanisms, right? To get away from predators, and then to store food. So one, you have to be alive to eat, and two, you have to eat. Like in the winter, they'll literally take big, sapling pieces or the big limbs off of trees, and poke them down in the mud of their water that they've backed up. But it really is because they are amazingly fast and more. They're semi-aquatic, but things they're aquatic, right? And that's their favorite and best place to live. They're like ice skaters are happiest on the ice, right? These guys are happiest in the water. They can get away from predation and they can store food, which keeps them alive. The smaller stuff is usually by their den or their lodge, but the big stuff to get through winter, it's a pretty amazing uh, plan that they have innately.
Our last question is from Skylar, who is wondering where beavers sleep.
They will sleep in their den or lodge. If they're gonna, crash for the day, they're in there now, snoozing away because it's cold. But it doesn't mean they can't come out and be chewing. I picture babies learning to chew and sitting there going chewing until they pass out because they're tired. But if they're truly, now that they're mostly nocturnal, then during the day, when all the diurnal animals are up there just snoozing inside there, and they wipe off and they try to get dry, and create that space for their family members to sleep.
Peggy, thank you so much for your time. If you want, you can do your closing sentence now. So
Thank you. I wrote just a note, and it was based on, again, Robin Wall Kimmerer, whom I spoke of, in her new book, Serviceberry, which is if the Serviceberry. It's a phenomenal new book. About reciprocity, and she put in there, and I was doing this program and it made me think about this, is mistreating a gift, meaning natural resources and nature. Mistreating a gift has emotional and ethical gravity as well as ecological resonance. You're going to change something if you pull something out, right? And today, no matter what, you want to be when you grow up. Beavers and all wildlife, natural resources, etc., are important to your very existence. We've lost attachment to them because they're not feeding us every day or giving us cash for their pelts every day in this case. But we need to remember that they are here for a purpose, and our purpose is to at least make good choices and think through before we just do something that doesn't make us happy or make us comfortable. And finally, my son one time said to me, he's an adult now, and he was probably in high school, and he said, "You're the only person I know that has to identify roadkill every time you go by, and you feel sorry for it." And I said, "I don't feel sorry for it. I'm giving it gratitude because nobody's noticing that its life was full of nitrogen and carbon and the water cycle, and its time was over, but I want to give it gratitude, right? Gratitude for being the part of whatever it was in its food chain." So think about that. It's not just about us, you guys. For everybody on this call, no matter what you want to be when you grow up, you'll be part of a society, and social capacity, decision making, everybody's involved in that, right? It's not just carrying capacity, how many animals can live here. Nature says this many, and adjusts appropriately. Everything now is about social capacity and that human wildlife interface. And I'm so grateful for anybody on here that hooked up this link with your children and your students. You can always find me through Illinois Extension. You can punch that in. You'll find me anywhere, sadly. But feel free to reach out. My email is psdoty. I used to be Peggy Doty. psdoty at illinois.edu. And thank you so much for everyone that's here
thank you for
today.
everything,
And for my
Peggy.
hosts.
Thank you. Thank you for everything. This was a wonderful presentation. We appreciate you so much. We really enjoyed it.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you too.
Thank you
Take
for
care.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.